Hi everyone, I'm Gina Minardi and I'm a licensed therapist who got fed up with therapy. This is a one-woman show about my journey of finding the spaces between non-traditional approaches of healing. What I learned is that there's no one right way to heal, and you truly are your best resource. Therapists and healers are meant to support you on your path, but they don't have all of the answers. You do. This show is about the spaces between laughter, tears, thoughts, ego, soul, messy growth, and moments of joy. It's about personal liberation, inner knowing, and the tools that get you there. I will cover topics that make many of us uncomfortable and interviewing people who are willing to go there. I've spent thousands of hours listening to human beings navigate their life story, from rehabs in Malibu to homeless shelters in East LA, and now my private practice. It has been some of the most profound, painful, and beautiful moments in my life. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Spaces Between. So, I wrote the following podcast a few weeks ago, but I have really vacillated about recording it and putting it out there because of just the responses in general in the world. I would say the general kind of vitriol, canceling, not hearing one another, but I have decided that I've put enough energy and my heart into this, and I hope that maybe a few souls would benefit from it. And I'm sure that I'm going to piss off a few from putting this out there. But here we go. So the reason that I've taken several weeks off of podcasting is because of my own need to emotionally process all of the current events in the world, not just in the Middle East, but obviously that's been glaring for all of us. And my partner had recently commented that he hasn't seen me cry or be this upset in such a long time over world events. And I honestly think it's because, like many of us, I am devastated and I'm completely overwhelmed with the level of violence, mass shootings in our country, corrupt leaders in power, and absolute vitriol and divisiveness ping-ponging back and forth in the virtual world and in the physical world. And of course, it's not like violence and war is new to humanity or on the feed of my news apps and Instagram, but it feels like we are reaching a critical precipice, or that we are collectively in a time of reckoning, which very much outside of the biblical use of it, it feels when something is wrong or unjust in a collective level. This is kind of a long time coming where there may be a resolution or not. So, which brings me to the big question I've been asking myself a lot lately. Can humanity ever come to a space of peaceful coexistence? And I would like to believe in my heart that it is possible. And many would say that it's incredibly naive of me to even ask the question. And that, we wouldn't see it for generations to come, even if there was potential for this. And many would argue that violence is part of our nature and our species, that the experience on this planet is one of duality, pain and pleasure, suffering and joy, light and dark, etc., that you really can't have one without the other. I'll say this, the universe is far too complex for me to say what is the truth of our existence, and I tend to steer clear of people who claim they understand it all. The same with history these days. A lot of people are claiming that they are almost along the lines of political strategists or historians, and I think we all need to be really careful these days. So I'm just going to speak from my gut and what I've just been feeling these days and really wanting to say. That we need to remember that we all come from the same space. This is where I'm going to really prickle some people right now. And whatever you want to call it, the great cosmic soup, the heavens, the universe, the stars, the big expanse, This is a belief that I have, that we all come from this space. And there's been a lot of talk about evil these days, particularly with Hamas. Some would say Netanyahu or even Joe Biden. What I believe evil is not in the biblical sense of the word, but rather it's humanity's denial of the divine or cosmic essence in another. And I'm going to really emphasize this right here. That's easy to do when another human engages in such horrific and atrocious acts against humanity. I want to be very clear when I say this. I have felt more rage, hate, and quote unquote othering of other humans than I have in a really, really long time. And I've had to take a deep look at that. And honestly, I've had serious therapy sessions over this, because ultimately, when we other another, we separate ourselves from another, thinking that we may never be the perpetrator or victim. We land in the space energetically of the same darkness, which is the denial of the divine in all of us. And again, I'm going to really prickle a lot of people by saying this, but when we hold on to that level of hate, aggression, retaliation, and creating more war within ourselves and collectively, we will never evolve. We will never truly learn how to love. When we are at war with ourselves, we will be at war in the world. So again, I'm going to be very, 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 very clear, because there are such charged feelings right now, particularly about what's going on in the Middle East. And this episode is not about me letting people off of the hook for their crimes against humanity. Far from it. I want in this episode, though, for all of us to drop into the space of who are we? Like, who are you really behind your name, behind your identity, behind your religion, behind even your race, behind where you live? Who are you? And what is your energy right now? And how are you, and what kind of energy are you adding to the world? Are you adding more fuel to the fire? So I want you to just think about this for a moment. This is something that I often think about as both a therapist working with people with complex trauma and also a new mom. That my heart feels cracked open on the weekly, wondering why some humans experience the level of trauma and suffering in their lives. And then I also think about this: a small baby who is never held when they cry, never feels nurturing, never feels emotional attunement, never feels safety and security, is yelled at, abused, left alone, and then maybe told throughout their life that other humans are evil based on religion, race, sexuality, where they live, etc. And they should be fearful to even breathe the same air with that other human. Even better, they should be eradicated. Now, I want to be very clear again when I say these things. I don't want to make any political statements right now about what's going on in the Middle East, but I do want to talk about darkness. And, I've had some clients and even friends who've done deep plant ceremonies, even in meditation, who will say that evil really does exist in other realms. Now, this might be really weird for people to hear right now, but that evil is a part of the universe. And I'm going to counter that. And I'm going to say, going back to these babies that never felt safety and security, abused, left alone. And now I'm not saying that's the entire reason maybe somebody enacts in horrible, atrocious crimes. But I just want to ask you, do you think a compassionate, loving, or self-aware human has been raised? Or maybe that human would become what some would label as evil because there's no love left in them. There's no relating to other humans as human. And so we might label that as evil. I would just say that these are humans that are living completely in the dark because they've only been exposed to the dark. And what a horrible, horrible place to live. Because so much of the beauty in being alive is living from the light and offering that love and light to others. But we must not join them in their deep darkness on our journey collectively to justice, right action, and peace in the world. We must lead with our hearts and our humanity. So I wrote the rest of this before the ceasefire, and a lot of this still just feels, I guess I want to say on every intuitive level in my being that, and I said it in the beginning when I talked about being on a precipice, that the world is on fire. Politically, environmentally, the gap between the rich and the poor seems to be getting wider. Our mental health deteriorating, where people really need help and they can't afford to get it. And I think many humans feel powerless these days, that the powers that be are really the ones making the decisions. So I know as a new mother, when I'm watching many of these events in the world, and whatever it may be, I donate where I can, I call representatives, but it often doesn't feel like enough. It's like a drop in the bucket. So while I want this episode really truly to lean towards hope, softening our hearts, and unity, I think we truly need to honor the space that we are in collectively right now. We are, at least it feels to me, in the eye of the storm. Systems are collapsing, but authoritarianism is rising. The earth is on fire, and she can't breathe, nor can we. We are angry, sad, grieving, reactive, and scared. And I believe there is hope and a different future possible. I want to emphasize this is a major transition and crossroad, potentially, and I sometimes move away from New Age terms and then also bring them in, that this could be a massive awakening in our humanity. So emphasizing this idea of ending wars in ourself and outwards. So when we come back to ourselves and our humanity, when we dig deeper into ourselves to be compassionate and soften, when we honor one another's pain, when we understand that intergenerational trauma is being activated on a deep collective level, when we shift from ego reactivity, righteousness, to that of knowing when to take a pause and respond skillfully, or the art and power of saying nothing at all. There is so much skillfulness in silence. Again, I'm going to be careful when I say that because we also need to be loud for voices that cannot be heard. But sometimes in the space of ego reactivity and righteousness, we need to ask ourselves, maybe I don't need to say anything right now if it's not from a space of wisdom or skillfulness. So again, asking ourselves, am I adding to the collective pain body, or am I working on my level of consciousness enough that I am creating space for myself and others to be heard, felt, and witnessed? When we ask ourselves, what is my individual shadow material, and how am I learning to integrate it versus disown, numb, or repress it? We will not know peace in this world until we take ownership of our own hatred towards ourselves and othering of other humans. I repeat this point because it's extremely prevalent and I think a huge part of the solution. We will not know peace in this world until we know that peace in our hearts. We will not know peace in this world when people hoard millions and billions of dollars while most of the planet doesn't have access to clean water, nourishing food, and housing. We will not know peace in this world until we start to investigate our own individual and collective greed and obsession with power. We will not know peace until we are in right relationship with the earth and honor her as a sentient being. I know that's hard for some people to get down with. We will not know peace until all people are seen as equal. We will not know peace in this world until we see ourselves in one another and even understand on some level that in your past lives, if you can also get down with this, that you have most likely been, as the Buddhists say, a confused human lost on the path and inflicted tremendous pain or terror on another. We will not know peace in this world if we continue to let misguided perspectives and opinions become the lens for our own. We will not know peace in this world when we believe that our religion makes us holier than another. We will not know peace in this world until many of these systems are dismantled. And we will not know peace in this world until we shift from us versus them mentality. So now I want to pause. I want to bring presence and space to any feelings I may have stirred up in you from anything that I've said. I want to invite you to notice if I've made you feel rage, sadness, triggered, or in some ways felt othered by me. This is not my intention. But I invite you into a space of disagreement and activation. A space of still being able to hold one another's humanity while not needing to be on the same page. A space of holding two or maybe multiple truths. But I'd also like to invite you back into your heart to breathe and bring awareness to your heart to soften. A space of knowing that love is the only answer. As my friend Jen always likes to say, when I get to the end of my life and I ask one final question, what have I done? Let my answer be, I have done love. So the question to you, my friends, is how do we come back to love? How do you love yourself? How do you love others? How do we ultimately come back to life? How do we shift from contraction to expansion? Can you be that compassionate vessel for other people's pain without needing to absorb it as your own? Can you be that vessel to hold space for both sides? And that doesn't mean, again, that you can't stand in your truth. The universe is experiencing itself through you. Most of us just want to do life. And I think that's one of the hardest things for me right now is that I get to do ordinary life with my son and experience the extraordinary miracle of that, while other people in the world are experiencing such deep suffering, violence, death, and terror. I've been telling my son lately that mommy is in tears doing my day-to-day activities with him because I know that he goes to bed each night with a full belly, warm and cozy, knowing that his parents are right there if he needs us. I've had to shift these days from a feeling of deep despair to acknowledging my own dark feelings and rage towards humanity, even processing the shock of what friends have posted and what humans are truly capable of when we are in deep pain. And as the Buddhists say, and some might say that this is simplistic, and again, it might anger people, someone is deeply, deeply, deeply confused on the path and disconnected from life and life force energy. There's no longer respect for it. So I recently revisited a book that I read years ago, and I'd like to share some quotes from it. And some of you will be very familiar with this book, and it's titled Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. If you don't know who he is, he was an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor of several Nazi camps. He founded a school of psychotherapy that describes a search for life's meaning as the central human motivational force. So I'm just going to read these quotes through, and then I'm going to move on to some other quotes from others. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of his personality. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human being unless he loves him. By this love, he is enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person. And even more, he sees that which is potential in him, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by this love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actualize these potentialities by making him aware of what he can be and what he should become. He makes these potentialities come true. Since Auschwitz, we know what man is capable of, and since Hiroshima, we know what is at stake. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which, as a whole, it would be easy to condemn. The salvation of man is through love and in love. Okay, this is the last quote by him. The story of a young woman whose death I witnessed in a concentration camp. It is a simple story. There is little to tell, and it may sound as if I invented it, but to me it seems like a poem. This young woman knew that she would die in the next few days, but when I talked to her, she was cheerful in spite of this knowledge. I am grateful that fate has hit me so hard, she told me. In my former life, I was spoiled and I did not take my spiritual accomplishment seriously. Pointing through the window of the hut, she said, "This tree here is the only friend I have in my loneliness." Through that window, she could see just one branch of a chestnut tree, and on the branch were 2 blossoms. "I often talk to this tree," she said to me. I was startled, and I didn't quite know how to take her words. Was she delirious? Did she have occasional hallucinations? Anxiously, I asked her if the tree replied, "Yes." What did it say to her? She answered, "It said to me, I am here, I am here, I am life, eternal life." So I'm going to read some more quotes from some non-violent activists and environmental activists, and I just really want you to take a breath, to feel into your body right now, and let all of these quotes simmer in your hearts, in your minds, and in your energy. So the following, and they're in this order, from Jane Goodall, Martin Luther King Jr., Greta Thunberg, Rosa Parks, and Dorothy Day. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Change happens by listening and then starting a dialogue with the people who are doing something you don't believe is right. We have so far to go to realize our human potential for compassion, altruism, and love. We can no longer let the people in power decide what is politically possible. We can no longer let the people in power decide what hope is. Hope is not passive. Hatred paralyzes life. Love releases it. Hatred confuses life, and love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life, and love illuminates it. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Man must evolve for all human conflict, a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I believe there is only one race, the human race. The greatest challenge of the day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart, a revolution which has to start with each one of us. What we would like to do is change the world, make it a little bit simpler for people to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves as God intended them to do. And by fighting for better conditions, by crying out unceasingly for the rights of the workers, the poor, of the destitute, the rights of the worthy and the unworthy poor, in other words, we can, to a certain extent, change the world. We can work for the oasis, the little cell of joy and peace in a harried world. We can throw our pebble in the pond and be confident that its ever-widening circle will reach the world. We repeat, there is nothing we can do but love. And dear God, please enlarge our hearts to love each other, to love our neighbor, and to love our enemy as a friend. I'd like you to take a breath. I'm going to breathe in with you. And so now I'd just like to wrap up this episode with a deep feeling of hope for the future and how we can all participate and add to this collective healing versus adding to the fire. So I heard Richard Rudd say in a podcast that I was listening to, let's think of the dragonfly. The dragonfly lives underwater as a predator. And at a certain point in its life, it goes through transmutations from the inside to the outside. A gene is then expressed and it comes out of the water and then it finds a piece of grass. Then the heat and the light hits the dragonfly. The water inside the insect interacts with the sun and then it sits there with these wings as a completely different creature. It's gone from gray to iridescent. That captures our process right now. Through this shift, what is coming? Can it be imagined, interconnected to all other beings? It's dormant right now, but can we awaken this? So these are some things that I personally believe are the most important right now for a sort of massive collective transformation. Balancing the divine feminine and masculine energy. Softening, and softening some more. In understanding that we are not separate from nature. So looking at our daily habits that are out of alignment with the earth and our individual bodies. Healing our traumas. That we cannot heal in isolation, but in community and, as the Buddhists say, in Sangha with each other. We absolutely must have sacred and safe spaces to gather. We need to remember that we are all doing this together. And our thoughts and words matter energetically. We need to focus on healthy relationships with each other. We need to dance, play, make art, and continue to be creative and joyous humans. We need to see the divine, or whatever you feel comfortable saying, in one another and have reverence for life in the other. And we need to continue to use our voices, get loud, stand up for justice, protest peacefully, call representatives, donate, volunteer, and share our loving and powerful energy where it is needed the most. So it is truly my hope and my highest intention that this episode brings you deeper into your heart and not away from it. But again, I'm going to really honor if anything activated in you. And I just like you to kind of check in with that. So remembering that we can all show up in love and activism and from that space of opening our hearts. And just, I guess I just want to say creating some space, It feels like, at least for me these days, the amount of news and information and our kind of addiction to technology, and there's so much, our brains are not meant to process this much information. And so I think most of us are pretty overloaded these days. So just creating some space in your life, breathing, sitting outside, taking a breath, looking at a tree, and remembering who you are. So this is my hope that this is the way that we can all sign up to do. All right, sending love and compassion. All right, see ya. Bye. Hi, friends. If you've been enjoying Spaces Between, please take a moment to subscribe, and leaving a review is the cherry on top. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you next week.